she laid down the foundation of integrating gaming elements into the classroom. And to continue with this discussion about games and education and games research, we segue into Steph M's discussion on creative gaming and education. We should get started shortly. So let's go ahead and sign in. And we will get started as soon as the host lets us in. Looks like we're about to get started.
And welcome everybody to the continuation of our first day of the River Speaks Presents Gaming is Everywhere. So today our focus is research and pedagogy, and our presenter for this session is going to be Stephanie Martinick, who is going to talk about creative gaming and education. This is a very good kind of progression, because this morning Francesca Robles talked about how you don't have to be very tech savvy in order to integrate gaming into your curriculum. And now we have Stephanie, who is going to kind of give us a practical demonstration of how to do that. So Stephanie is a teacher and instructional designer in Vancouver, British Columbia, where she researches games and education, digital media, arts development and games, and digital literacies. And her games have earned an international reputation. So I'm just going to throw it to you. Go ahead, Stephanie. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. So I am Steph. Please, if you see my name around on the internet, I'm actually Stamarty, and that's kind of my avatar gaming identity, I suppose. And I'm just going to jump into my presentation. So the first bit's just going to be a little bit about me, about what I do, why I do it. And then we're going to demo something that I've made. And then the last bit will be, I'm going to share how I made it. And I will be creating some video tutorials for anybody who's unfamiliar with PowerPoint. So some of the things that I do, I might go a little too fast. So please in the chat, tell me to slow down if you really want me to get more technical. And I'm always happy to answer any questions as we go along. So I'm going to share my screen here. Just give me a moment. Perfect. And I'm going to pop up my game design here. All right, so can everybody see this okay? Just in the chat would be great.
Looks good to me.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm gonna call this Game Design 101, and it's just a small little conversation, particularly around the focus of gaming in education and how teachers, educators, anybody really can use this concept to make learning fun. And I've used this formula, not just in the classroom itself, I've used it in large group activities, conferences, I've used it at pub trivia nights, I've used them for camps. So this is really adaptable, it's really flexible. And it's a lot of fun to kind of explore creatively what you can do with it. So before we even get into this, I would like to share just a couple things about me, who I am, and how I got started. This is where I began. This is my genesis, my birth. And it is one of my favorite video games of all time. It's a Game Boy game. Came out on the Super Famicom in Japan. It's known as Dragon Warrior 3 in the West and Dragon Quest 3 in Japan. And I think the reason why I love this game so much is it's such a simple concept. You're a hero, you go on a quest to defeat a demon that kind of destroys or is wanting to destroy the world. And you pick up party members on the way, you get to design who they are, you design their classes, you fight with them, you create a name for them. And it's a very rudimentary game in terms of the story. I find that the story is very generic, you know, hero goes on quest, they save the world, bing, bang, boom. But when I was a kid playing this, I was a young, probably 9 or 10 when I played this. And then I played it several times through my teens. What I loved about it was that because the characters were silent, I created my own story. And I created my own story for the 4 characters that I had. And I still remember my 4 characters, and I still remember their names. I have origins for them. I have post stories. Like I kind of want to write a fan fiction about these characters. And when I beat the game, when I killed that demon, his name was Baramos, the story continued. And you fall through, sorry, spoiler warnings, you fall through a cavern in this area by where the demon is, and it opens up this whole other segment. And that blew my mind when I was 10, because I thought the game was done. You know, you start, you go through the journey, and then you end with killing the thing that you're supposed to kill. And then there's this whole post game. And that had never been done for me before. And it just really opened my mind to how can we make games surprising? How can we have twists? So that idea of the twist factor really plays into the games that I've designed. And so I credit a lot of the things of who I am and why I love games to this screenshot right here. So this is kind of where I started my very, very first journey with making games. So I use Microsoft PowerPoint. And I should note to all of you is that with Microsoft PowerPoint, I use the version on PC. The Mac version does work. However, when I get into the demo, I'm going to talk a little bit about the trigger issues and the technical issues with the Mac side. However, my notes are about 4 years older, so it might have fixed, but I will be doing mostly PC version. Mac is slightly different. So I lived in Korea in my early 20s, and I taught in an all-boys middle school, and their English level was quite low. And I had to figure out a way to make English fun, because my job was to get them to speak, not to teach grammar, not to teach the vocabulary. My job was to get those kids to speak English. And it can be really boring if you don't put play or fun into that. So I kind of turned to games as a way to make it more entertaining. And the classes were small, so we could do this. And I started experimenting just with using PowerPoint because the school had it. It was the only thing that I had access to that was digital. And in every classroom, they had these massive computer monitors. So I utilized technology. And so we created this game where the students would choose a question and each team would have, to answer the question. And it was very simple, as you can see on the screen, like he, to the story yesterday, and then the kid had to come up and speak it out. And so the goes went, that would be the answer that like popped. And so they had to tell me the conjugation. And this was a very simple question. If they got it right, they got a point or candy or something. Then I started thinking about making it more interesting. I said, okay, what would happen if they chose a question? They could choose which question they wanted, and it would have different point values. Some of them would be 5, some of them would be 1, but they don't know how many they're getting. It's all random. And then I thought to myself, what happens if some of those questions were bad? Like, what if it was a bad incentive and they don't know which ones are bad? So it's a risk. And when you're working with middle school boys, 7, 8, grade 7, 8, and 9, they loved it, like loved that risk. And so I started playing with this idea. And I made this really, really simple game, but it was so crude and so ugly. They loved it because they've never seen anything like it. And this was the very beginning of my game making experimentation. And unfortunately, they kind of caught on to when the bombs or when the bad things would show up, because I would put like a little reminder in the corner that there was something evil. And so I needed a way to kind of hide all of that. I needed to learn how to use this program a little bit more sneakier. And so I started making better games, and I looked towards pop culture, video games, shows that the kids were enjoying, video games that they were enjoying. So I was targeting my interests to them. But I also needed to make sure that I was familiar with the items that I was making. So this was kind of the second or the third game that I made, where I really learned how to make interesting things happen. So you're going to see 3 slides here. The first one, this is kind of, all of my games are similar to trivia. So you choose a question, there's a, like a color, which would launch you or link you to a new question. And if you answered it right, I would hit this little barrel, and I'll demo that in a minute. And then there would be some sort of award or incentive. And again, the student wouldn't know how much the reward was until they answered the question. And then you would jump back to the question world and then choose a new one. And so the Donkey Kong was kind of my first idea, and it went really well. And then I posted it online, and my popularity just exploded. And then I started getting a little bit more creative. I started looking at TV shows and TV game shows that I really enjoyed and implementing that with student interest. So Simpsons, universal popularity. And I created this thing called Homer's Deal, where again, I wanted the incentive to be random, but I also wanted the formula. I kept changing the formula of how my games are made, because variety is the spice of life. I wanted the kids not to get bored with the things that I created. And I didn't play games very often, but when I did, I wanted it to be a big deal. So I created this thing based off of the TV show Deal or No Deal, where you choose a briefcase and then you get to decide if you take it with the money inside or you give it back. And so I had this where the student would answer a question, and then Homer would appear on the screen. And he would say, okay, I'll give you 5 points. And the kid could take it, or the team could take it if they were playing in groups. I usually had them play in groups because it's more inclusive. And they could say, yeah, we'll take the 5 points and give them points. You move on. But you could also say no deal. And it could be really good, or it could be really bad. And man, boys loved it. Most of them said no deal. And so that added an extra layer of complexity. And then in a few years, once I got more used to PowerPoint as not only a game program, because you can do so much with this program, I started using it as a design program. And I got really creative with my design, I suppose, of the layout of the screen. And so I read the entire series of Fairy Tale because the kids loved it. And I fell in love with it. And then I made a game about it. And so from generation 1, I'll call it, to generation 2, I was continually adapting my style, my technique. This is over a span of 4 years. And so I believe I made this probably in my first or second year teaching in Korea, and this would have been in my 4th year that I made this one. So I'm taking everything that I've learned, everything that I've explored, and putting it into a game. One of my favorite things to do as a game maker is pick from pop culture, and we'll talk a little bit. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about copyright in a little bit. But when I was just teaching in Korea, I needed a way for the kids to be invested, to be involved. So I picked things that they knew, images, icons that they knew. This is actually Lord Baramos that you got to destroy in Dragon Warrior 3. So I decided to, put him in the game. And I really love those monster dungeon crawling games. I've always been a fan of RPGs. So I kind of took that to the next level. And you'll notice if anyone reads Korean, this says Kim Min-soo. And I started naming the monsters after my students without telling them. And they loved it. I knew that they would love it. Any student that I knew would be offended, of course I didn't put it in, but most of my boys were gung-ho. And once they saw that one of them was named after a monster, they were like, who am I? Who am I? And so I would make sure that they had, each of them would be, a monster of some sort. And sometimes I would play, depending on their personality, I'd give them like somebody who is really small or known to be, quite short or weaker. I'd give them like this massive worm from Final Fantasy. And then kids that were really tall and kind of cocky, I would give them a flower. And they loved it, right? But again, I had to know my audience in order to do that. And then I switched that idea because not a lot of them were as familiar with Final Fantasy and Dragon Warrior. I think they were a little too young. I switched that to Pokemon. And I think at the time when I was in Korea, X and Y had come out. So I used the icon, the graphics from X and Y. And I started playing with looking at the design of Pokemon games, of the battle system. This is my first gen idea that I had here. And then I started to get a little bit more modern, I suppose. So my design changes. I've always was looking at the internet for sources of inspiration. I was playing the games myself in order to understand those design concepts, but then also spin a little bit of myself into them. So I'm not carbon copying anything. I did also try to download, this one doesn't show it, but I did download like Pokemon font and other things to really feel like it was legitimate, but I had a lot of fun making those types of games. I have made games in a multiple and variety of themes. I have learned to the interests of my students, what they love, what they're passionate about. I learned how to play League of Legends. I went to a PC room, a gaming room at 11 o'clock at night and played with a bunch of teenagers to learn League of Legends. They were more than happy to do that. I read every single episode or every single volume of Fairy Tale. I am a massive Zelda fan, so of course I put Zelda in there. I did things for other schools and other commissions. I made a Lego game once. I did experimenting with not just answering questions and getting points, but also like a strategy game where teams could like destroy other teams' home bases or planets. I watched every single episode of One Piece. I think at the time it was up to like episode 700. I had a lot of time in Korea. I didn't work a full-time like 7-block schedule. So when I didn't have anything to do, instead of sitting on my butt watching TV, I made games and I perfected my games. And I absolutely loved it. And I even learned what MapleStory was. So I tried to learn things that the kids liked, but then I also incorporated things that I loved. I love Mario, I love Zelda, Adventure Time. I made this dinosaur game, which is probably my favorite. It's the most ugliest thing ever. However, I wanted to put something that I loved into the games as much as things that they loved into my games. So it was kind of a two-way street. So what I would like to talk about just before we launch into my technical demo, and I'll check the chat in a moment if anybody has any questions for me, is copyright. So when I was in Korea teaching for educational purposes, I used everything. I used backgrounds, artwork, sprite work, music, fonts, and I just freely uploaded them. I've never sold my games, especially because using copyright items it's a gray area, especially when you sell it. So I only share these virtually one by one. And if anybody would like any copies of anything that I have, I can show you my library. I'm more than happy to share. I don't sell them. I freely share so that people can use them in education, in a classroom. That's what the older versions of my games are made for. But I'm going to show you my new generation, which is actually created by my students and myself. I forget that I put really fancy animations. All right. So here are some ways that I've kind of started thinking about copyright. So if you're creating games with trademark stuff, you're putting Pikachus or Bulbasaurs and Mario characters, educational purposes is fine. Please don't sell them. Please don't try to get them online without permission. If you are using something that has copyright or is made by somebody, ask them first. Reach out to that creator, reach out to that developer. I actually reached out to Eric Maroney from Stardew Valley, the Chucklefish, and I asked him if I could use screenshots in an academic journal that I wrote in a giant anthology a couple years ago. And he said, go for it. Like, he actually personally responded. You never know who is going to respond. I have a beautiful letter from a Disney lawyer that basically told me, no, I can't use their work. And I framed it and I put it on my wall. So no Disney. But please just reach out. You never know. Here's where I think we should go into generation 3, because that's where I am right now, is using open source royalty-free assets. And assets just mean anything that is image, sound-based, any kind of icons or anything that you're putting into your work. If they're royalty-free, they're free game. And there are ways to look at which ones are safe and how they're safe. Safe searches is always best. But I think that if you're really going to do something really interesting, design everything by your own hands. It takes time, but you own it. It's your baby. It's your beast. And I would like to go a little bit more deeper into the design everything by hand, because it's actually how I learned how to make, or it's how I learned Illustrator. And this, for any of the arts educators out there, hi, this is a great project for any of your students. If you teach digital media, anything with computers, Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, art, this is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do with your students. And it's how I teach Illustrator. So what I'm going to demo for you is what's called a bomb game. And this piece of work here that you see on the screen is one of my personal babies. And I created this with a group of grade 11 students. There were 7 of us in total. And we created everything in Illustrator by hand. And we worked with a grade 2 class in an elementary school. And so the grade 2 students gave us the idea. We all sat together. We said, we're going to make you a game. What kind of theme do you want? And they wanted to do monsters. They wanted like a cute little monster game. And so we took that idea and we went back to the classroom and we sat and we talked about it. And I went through, how the game was made and the functions of the game. And so we kind of came up with this idea of the computer and this little messenger that the monsters were talking to the player. And then we went back to the students and we talked about it. And then we asked the students to draw their cute monster. And we wanted cute monsters. We didn't want anything gross because they're 7. And they gave us gross, but we asked them for cute. And so we took some of those ideas, went back to the classroom in our classroom, and then drew their creations and put them in the game. And what they are called is called a bomb game. And so this is probably the last game that I made when I lived in Korea. It's all animated and programmed in Microsoft PowerPoint. And I'm just going to let it load. All right, so how this game works is in a classroom environment, you usually have teams that are divisible by 3 or 6 because there are going to be 30 questions. And I usually like to have around 5 or 6 teams, and then you can just put students into small groups. I like to cater the students in based on their skill set. So you want some weaker and some stronger students together. And when they have a turn, they're going to choose a question. They're going to answer that question and they're going to claim a prize. And at the prize point, it could be plus points, it could be 3 points, 4 points. There could be minus points, -10, -7. They have the opportunity sometimes to find switch points where one team will switch with another. And why we call this a bomb is because they lose all their points if they find the bomb in the game. But it's random. Nobody knows when they're going to find good points or when they're going to find bad points. The question page will look identical to this. And the team must choose the right answer in order to receive points and get a reward. The answer appears at the bottom. And there will be points that are sometimes distributed at the bottom corner as well. And for navigation purposes, if it's clicked on the little arrow in the top or the bottom left corner, it will move you to the next part of the game. And the red arrows go back to the question selection if there is a mistake. One of my favorite features of this story is known as the mystery box element. And I spoke a little bit about adding twists into your game to make them more interesting and make the students keep guessing what's going to happen next. So sometimes throughout this game, I have what's called a mystery box. And the students don't have to open it, but if they do, they must take what's inside, usually very good or very evil. Here's kind of simply how the game works. Is we start at a question selection screen. And once again, this is all done in PowerPoint. I use the illusion of transitions to make it appear like it's going up and down from the keyboard to the computer monitor. And I can show you how I've done that, but everything is its own, each unique slide. And when I break it down for you in the second part of my talk, I'll actually show you how I do that. So imagine that we were playing a game together in a classroom or in an environment. This game would be projected on a large screen. A teacher or moderator controls everything that happens on the screen. You can have a scoreboard. I usually use a chalkboard or a whiteboard because it's easy to erase the points. Sometimes I get a student to do the point system or a helper. Sometimes I do it myself. Students sit in teams. And because there are 30 questions in most of my games, now as a designer yourself, if you were to make these, you can make as many questions as you want, depending on your lesson, depending on how long you want the game to be, depending on the style of what you want. I find 30 is a good max. If you go over 30, attention starts to kind of waver. And you just kind of start by team. So this is a turn-based game. So if you have 5 teams, A, B, C, D, E, A team would go first or draw straws to choose the turn order. It's up to you. Again, I always like when students ask me, well, why is it this way? I always say, well, I'm the game master. D team goes first because I say so. I mean, you get to decide what you want. So let's say D team goes first. So D team chooses a letter. They choose H. Click on H, and it will pop up to the computer monitor, and there will be a question there. What I am showing you is a base game. I call this my skeleton template. I am going to give every single participant today this exact copy. It is empty, and so you can actually go in and put in your own questions, put in your own answers, and it's good to go. So if you don't want to learn how to make these, because it does take a little bit of a learning curve, I freely give you what is already done, and you are able to take this apart and figure out what did I do? Or you can be like, sweet, free game, and then you can put your stuff in and over and over and over, just change the questions. And this is for any content. I've used this for review, exam prep, translation, reading exercises, true and false. Like you can even change the layout, and I'll show you how I break it down in a couple minutes here. But imagine that the student said the right answer. I have notes underneath the slideshow to explain the game function. So how to get the answer to appear, how to move and navigate across. So please feel free to download this game and read all of my navigation notes of how everything works in here. But I just pressed a little button, the little arrow on the keyboard to make it appear. And then there's a point allocation here. And you give the team, D team, those points. And then you press the white arrow. And the white arrow will hyperlink you or link you to a next part. So let's see if we get a mystery box. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. We do. And for those of you who remember MSN, this layout is kind of from my MSN days. And then it took me an hour to explain what MSN was to my teenagers. But I kind of used a little piece of my interests in here. And so the team can say yes or no. So right now, D team's got 3 points. If they say yes, then they must open the gift and take those points. But if they say no, I give them 2 points, and then we just go back home. Naturally, no one says no. It's very rare that they say no. Even when they're winning, they say no. So if they said yes, if you click on the yes, then they get the bomb, unfortunately, and they would have to lose all of their points. So now that that's over, you're going to notice that my animation disappears. And now it's time to choose another question. So D team was first, so then we would go to E team. It's the same system. And say they choose. I have designed each of these slides to be exactly the same. However, each question would be different. It looks the same, but I've actually have 30 different slides that have this for you. And again, you can change this if you want. So E team says the right answer, you give them the points in the corner, and then you move on to the next part. And unfortunately for the end, there is no mystery box. So sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. And then the next team would choose a letter or a number. And say, you know, they're goofing around, they're being jerks, and they don't deserve the question. You can actually always have a little fail safe in the top corner that says, you know what, guys, you're not behaving, or XYZ reason, you don't deserve to play. We're just going to go back and skip. Once all of these are disappeared, the game is over. And I can actually show you how I've made this happen. And you'll notice that if I when you hover your cursor, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not, but if you hover your cursor over these parts, it will not let you link to that question. So you will never repeat a question. And you just continue to play until the questions are all selected and there is a winner. And as a designer, I'll actually pull this game up for you. Let's see if I can find it. Here we are. So as a designer, you get to decide how the game is run, but then also how many points are given. For this one, everything is linked, especially if you've got some mystery boxes or other special little points values down here. So let me break this down a little bit more for you. And again, you are welcome to have a copy of this and really dig into what this is. So the first couple of slides here is just an introduction slide. This is where I've animated all the little creatures to come to life. And the idea is that, you know, this little guy jumps into the computer screen and then we're playing a game in somebody's living room. I always have a screen at the very top that, says the name of the game. And I even have two little boxes here that you can click on, especially if I'll zoom in. The first one is the new game, which will explain the rules to your group if they don't know the rules or you want to review them. But then I also have a little link here that if you've played this game before, then you can just jump straight to the game and you don't have to go through those rule slides. And everything is actually just linked. So if you're familiar with Microsoft PowerPoint, you can actually link slides to other slides. So I can link this or an object to another slide. So if I clicked on my box here and right-clicked on my mouse, there's something called a hyperlink, and it'll say hyperlink here instead of edit link. And if you choose the place in this slideshow, which is the second one in the menu, you will actually be able to choose what slide that object would be linked to. And you can link it to any slide. So what I like to kind of tell students learning Microsoft PowerPoint as a game designer or like an interactive program is think of it like a website. Each slide that you create is its own page, and you can program objects or links to jump from one page to another. And that's all my programs are, or my games are, is each object in the game is linked to another slide within this program. And when you click on something, it will link to a slide. And when you click on other objects, such as the arrow, if we look at the link here, it's linked to another slide, which would be my mystery box. And if you clicked for curiosity on the red arrows, because this is the go back fail safe to the question slide, it's always going to be linked to the question slide. So all my objects are linked to different places. And some games are a bit more easier to navigate than others. This one I would say is a medium to beginner in terms of navigation. But when you download this, you will see some notes on how to navigate the game and what each object does and why it does it. When we break down the slides in the slide panel here, I start with the question selection. Here are my 30 questions, and each of these letters will be linked to a different question slide. So even though that they look the same, they're each a different question slide, and they're all linked to a corresponding letter from my keyboard. Some of them will have a mystery box event under it. So for example, on slide 8, if I put my question here and had you can literally just click into the boxes. They're just text boxes actually. So you can do whatever you like. And you can even, change the size of the font. You can change the type of the font if you didn't like that font. You can change the question type. And if you even wanted to get more creative, you can even make it smaller or bigger. These layers are not locked. So you as the designer or as the teacher can decide what works best for your types of questions. Maybe, multiple choice A, B, C, D isn't a good one. Maybe you just want true or false answers, right? If you're teaching kindergarten, for example, maybe that's too much. So you can decide, and then it becomes its own special question. And you can do that for every single slide, every single question, and there are 30 of them. And all the linking is done for you. So for those who don't want to build them, this is a great option. This arrow, if you see a little mystery box event underneath, this arrow will always link it to the mystery box event, always. And it'll be the right link. I've checked the links about 6 times. So if your team answered true or false this question right, and you click on the arrow as the game master, it will go to this one. And then once they decide if they're going to open it or not, then you just press the no button here. And if we check the no return, if we check that hyperlink, it just jumps back to the question selection slide for you. So everything is kind of linked so that if you do accidentally get lost somewhere in the game, there's always a way to return to the question selection slide or the home base, whatever you would want to call it. And that's basically what this is. This one is not as crazy complicated as other ones are, but what does it look like for the yes? So if we click on no, we know that we're going to go back to the question selection. But if we click on yes, if I look at my hyperlink, I'll just show you, it actually jumps down to the very bottom. It actually jumps down to slide 64. And if I go down here, all the way down, there is the slide 64. So with the mystery box events, rather than having these appear on the slide itself, I've actually just linked it to a brand new slide that looks exactly the same in order to recycle assets. So I don't have to continually copy and paste all of this into different mystery box events. I have different types of questions or rewards that you can choose. So for example, on this slide, I can actually look at the yes answer and what I would get by checking my link as a designer. And it says 10 monster points. Well, I'm teaching high school and I think 10 points is too much. Let's give them -8. And you can press OK, and then that will actually change the prize incentive. And you can do that for every single yes point value. Just got to make sure that you actually click on the yes. 5 points? Yeah, I think 5 points is a good one. This is, a really good one, depending on your audience. I have designed this game for middle school. So if you're working with students that might be a group that's a little bit more sensitive and the minus points might be too much, you can change that. Or if you're working with I like bombs. I love finding mystery bombs. So I'm going to leave bomb. If you're working with a group where you know that you can push them, you know that they really want, a nasty game with lots of bombs and lots of minus points and, other things, then you can decide, ooh, -5, 12. I'm going to give them 12. You can decide the point allocation. So nothing is ever set in stone. The same goes for each question. Maybe 3 points is too much. Maybe you want to give them 1 point for that question. Maybe the question's very easy, so you only give them 1 point. Or maybe the question is really ridiculously hard, so you give them 10 points. You get to edit everything in this beast. So from the questions to the style of the questions to the point allocations and to the separate special bonuses, even this, give them 89 points if you want to. Up to you. You are the master of what and how many points in this game people get. And you don't even have to give them points. Give them candy. No homework. Find something that suits your style, your teaching style. If you're a teacher, or if you're playing this with a group of adults in a pub, that's a fun time. I don't know, shots for everyone, right? Whatever it is, you get to kind of decide what special prize you would like to give to your team on that particular one. And again, it is 100% customizable. So I'm actually just going to see if I can open up the chat button here so that I can take a look if anybody has any questions. Let's see where it is. They would appreciate no homework as a prize. That's a good one. I might take that one. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I'm pulling actually up the chat just to see how you are responding to it. GIFs, oh, that's too bad that GIFs aren't allowed in Zoom. You can put GIFs in PowerPoint and they can animate. And that's actually a fun one that I did with my fairy tale game, where I actually had GIFs of really important battles. And then the kids could like watch the GIF or watch the video until the very end. I'd make it play automatically, and then the points would show up. You can make it a really fun user experience. Mystery boxes are amazing. Awesome, thank you for the chat. If anybody has any questions, now would be a great time to ask me anything about this particular game. Anything that they would like me to kind of just go over before I get into the nitty-gritty of it. So any gaming that can be created in PowerPoint and then converted to video. Good question. I know that you actually can, in Microsoft PowerPoint, save your presentation as a video file, like as an MP4, but in order for that to work kind of like as a video piece, all the animations and transitions would have to be automatic. But if you are talking about, if you're talking about making it as a video as kind of like a demonstration, or like this is what this can be made as, and take a look at how this game is played, and then you record yourself, I think is that kind of the suggestion there for, where is my chat feature? But in terms of making into a video, I don't think so, but you can screen record yourself playing it, and then that can be a video if that's something that is what you would like to do. Is there, I'm just trying to get the chat, there we go. Sorry, my chat was behind my PowerPoint. Any mechanisms or techniques you try that did not work and recommend avoiding? No. It's a really good question. I'd have to think on that one. The one that sometimes works really well, but then also can fail really terribly is what I like to call nuclear. And nuclear is a giant bomb that destroys every single team's points. So depending on your audience, the boys love it. They love nuclear, especially at the end of a game when tensions are really high and it's the last question, and then somebody gets a nuclear and everything just gets decimated. That's brilliant. But then I've had it where somebody found a nuclear in a group of young, I think it was around grade 3, grade 4 girls. It was just like a girls' camp, and the nuclear happened and there were tears. So that one is probably something that I would be very careful about. I also try to stay away from making my games too mean. So too many bombs, too many minus points, the game can get a little sloppy. It really depends on your audience. YouTube games where you have a clip and click on one of the two links that would take you to an unlisted video. Neither do I. If you find it, let me know, please. All right. The choose your adventure style games are actually really fun to do. I'm just going to spinball off of that one, off of YouTube, of the YouTube idea. You can actually use hyperlinking to choose your own adventure style, where you actually have a slide and you ask a question like, would you go left or right? And then you can have left and right. And if you click on the left, then it would jump to another one and the narrative would continue, or right and the narrative would continue. That is kind of similar to Twine, where you have interlooping stories and different things happening throughout your entire choose your own adventure. That just takes a lot of planning, but you can do the choose your own adventure style games in PowerPoint. If anyone is interested in that, they can send me an email. I'll put my email down at the end of this chat for anybody interested in wanting to talk to me about that, because that's like a whole other beast that you can get into. And unfortunately, we just don't have time to get into all of the really awesome things that this game program can do. So I'm just going to jump back into my presentation. I'm going to talk just a little bit about game design concept and where my mind goes when I design them and how I design them, because I think that that's really important to know before we get into the nitty-gritty. So for those of you who are technically interested in how I make them, this is a great second part of this talk. And for those of you who are like, PowerPoint is still, I don't really understand it very well, follow along. And also please download the things that I give you so that you can figure out in your own time how to make these. It just takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of dedication to learn where everything is. So this is like my game concept here. When you break it down, all of my games are fancy ways of just using what's known as hyperlinks, trigger animations, and good looking design. I'm going to be focusing on the first two today. Good looking design, I'll give you a small little tips and tricks there, but with hyperlinks and trigger animations, I'm going to show you how I do that and how you can make a really simple game yourself today so that you can go home and you can kind of start playing with that. So what's the secret to making games? Why are my games so incredibly popular? I really just limited it to my imagination. It's just all about what can you make that people are gonna want more? How can you make it more interesting? How can you think outside that box? How can you twist and make something where they don't expect it to happen? And I just have a massively huge imagination, but I think that also I attribute that to the books I read, to the games that I play, and the TV shows that I watch. And I actually just take a lot of inspiration from those pieces and put them very little bits and bytes of it into my PowerPoint games. So it's not, I'm building things from scratch and using my imagination from scratch. I'm also taking other ideas and kind of appropriating them in my own style. So what specifically makes a game? And this is, of course, tailored to my PowerPoint games, but I think that this can be tailored to game design in general. So the first thing that I do when I make my own game is I think about my audience. Think about who they are and who I'm building them for. You can't just build a game for you. Yes, you can. You sort of can. But if you are making something that you want for someone else, if you're making it for a student group or education, you do have to consider that they are kind of your clients here, because they're the ones that are going to be interacting with it the most. So who's your target? Is your target kids? Are you making something for 7-year-olds, teens, adult learners? What are your cultural factors? Who and where are your people from? What region? Are they international? Are they ELL students? Are they from a specific country? So somebody, you know, maybe a student from, you know, the United States might not know that much about K-pop. They might, but not a lot of us, not a lot of people will listen to K-pop. K-pop is a very specific type of Korean popular music. So you do kind of want to put a little bit of cultural factor and relatively readability. You want your audience to be able to connect. Then you want to think about your theme. What would kids prefer versus adults? Would adults want to play a Hello Kitty game? I mean, I would. But I don't know if the general adult population, if I went and did this, say, at, you know, a trivia night, you know, in a pub somewhere downtown Vancouver in the East Side, which is more the trendy place, I don't know if Hello Kitty would really fly. You do want to kind of think about your theme. And then you want to think about your characters, your icons, your design specs. And that's really what is recognizable and interest-based. And this is where we get into the copyright. Are you making things, you know, are you using copyright images because it's best for fun, it's for education, or are you going to build something that is completely 100% yours? And then you want to think about your gameplay and your ideas that are suitable to the age and maturity. I'm going to go back to that question about what doesn't work. That nuclear idea, the idea of the super bomb, if you want to call it the super bomb. If you're playing with a bunch of 5-year-olds, sometimes the super bomb doesn't work. You might get some tears. Whereas if you're working with a bunch of adults, that actually might be a really fun and hilarious way to shake up the game core in the middle of the game. So you really want to think about how old or who your learners are before you start thinking about what mechanics in game you're going to put in there, because some things are going to work better than others. The second thing that I think about once I kind of have that all done, I usually just jot it down on a notepad, is a style. How are you going to kind of create, what's your narrative of your game? How is the game going to be, how is it going to flow? Is essentially what I ask myself. So here is the standard bomb game formula that I create. So teams choose a question. They answer the question. They receive some sort of points or award or incentive. And sometimes there is an extra. Not always, but sometimes there is an extra. And it could be good or it could be bad. That is a very general bomb game formula that my students have known to love and admire in my games. And then once you know that game formula, you have to ask yourself, how do you want to make that game flow? Do you want everything to seamlessly go from one slide to another? Do you want to hop around? Are you going back and forth and doing some sort of battle arena kind of a style? Or are you just going from A to B to C to D? And that really depends on what kind of game you are making. Then I think about the playing mechanics, how the game is actually going to be played while I am controlling it with my learners. So earlier I mentioned that yes, you have to build the game for others, your clients, but there also has to be a piece of that that you love, that is for you, that makes you giddy while making it, that makes you excited, because it shouldn't feel like a chore, because it's going to take you a long time. I've had games that have taken me over 30 hours just in PowerPoint, and my eyes get that like red dryness because I am so tired. And you get that glaze, that glassy glaze. You're like, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be looking at a screen anymore. But you want to because you want to finish. That's what you want. So you do have to find that balance, but you have to make games for you as well. So you still have to love what you do, because, I mean, I don't make them to get paid for them. I make them because I love them. But that's just me. The gameplay mechanics that I like to think about is, here are some things that you could consider. You don't have to consider all of them, but you can consider a couple, right? Are you going to have a random and spontaneous type of game where points are going to just thump from all over the place and no team is ever going to know what's going to happen next? Sidebar. I always tell my students or my learners, my game players, before we play the game, I say the points don't matter because they're gonna move around. Do not get attached to your 5 points, because guarantee that in the next 3 turns, those 5 points are either going to be tripled, decimated, or you might even be in the negatives, because I do go into the negatives for certain game styles. So are you going to have a really random game where that switches all the time, or are you going to have a little bit more low key? You know what? No, you keep those points, and it just keeps building and building and building. So you get to decide. The reason why I like to call it a bomb game is that bomb is so important. The bomb that erases points in a game allows the game to be a little bit more fair. In kind of a way that, what I mean is, if you have a team that is extremely strong and just gets super lucky and gets all of those really good points and all answers all the questions that have, you know, the 5 points, the 7 points, the 10 points, and they've got 50 points, and the rest of the team has, you know, the rest of the class has 3 and 10, you know, like a little bit of a lower amount of points. If that really strong team gets a bomb, it just levels the playing field, because any team can win. It's not about skill. You can make it about skill if that is the kind of game that you want. But I love the bomb because it lowers that chance that the best, smartest kid will win. And I like that, because the smaller teams, the students that are weaker, or the team that just doesn't know all of the answers at that particular moment, know that they have a fighting chance to be something. And that's why I love the bomb so much. Let's come back. Hidden spots, you have little hidden things. Sometimes I'll have like little secret shops where they can like spend their points on candy, or they can buy a day of no homework, or they can, you know, do something special. You can break up question selection. Sometimes instead of 30 questions on one screen, I will have 10 questions, and it's particular to one theme. For example, art. If I did a history in our history game, the first one might be all about, you know, the Renaissance. And then the second section would be about the Baroque period, and the third section would be about, you know, Romanticism. So you can actually, it doesn't have to be 30 questions. You can kind of play with that. Are you going to mimic the style of a popular game? Are you going to look at a board game like Clue or Life? Are you going to look at a video game like Pokemon, or, you know, an RPG battle style game? Are you going to look at something like chess or checkers? Like, you could take inspiration from other things around you. Dungeons and Dragons, is it going to have a story to it? And kind of incorporate those elements into your own game. And what kind of game are we playing here? Is it going to be nice, or are we going to do the dirty game that all my male students enjoyed? And then I like to think about my bonuses. Each of my games have a different bonus style. I like the fact of showing up to game day and they don't know what's gonna happen. They see the game on the screen, and if it's a new game, they're like, ooh, what's the bonus? How are we gonna play this one? I don't like it when they know, okay, we answer a question, we get points, we get an extra, we move on, question, points, extra, move on. So sometimes that's why my mystery boxes don't appear in games. I might have something else. So here are some bonuses that I have incorporated in old games. You do mystery boxes, deal or no deal. Oh my God, rock, paper, scissors fight. That's a fun one. I usually just say A and B team. So A team finds the rock, paper, scissors fight, and they choose a team to fight against. A teams right now got 5 points. B team has 10 points. Combine all of their points. Now you got 15 points in the pot. A team chooses a champion. B team chooses a champion, and you have like a rock, paper, scissors, shoot fight over it. Winning team gets all the points. It's kind of fun. Choose A, B, or C. Just have like 3 little boxes and be like, pick one. And the secret shop, I always have, sometimes in some of my games, I'll have one hidden little shop where if you spend your points, then you can get candy or some sort of special incentive. I don't always do the secret shop, but it's kind of fun sometimes to put that in there. Last thing. Sometimes the theme will come to me naturally. Sometimes the theme comes to me at the very beginning, where I'm like, I'm gonna make a Sailor Moon game. And then sometimes I'm like, I don't know. With the don't think there's 900 chapters. I want to say there's 700 chapters of Naruto. Somebody correct me if on that number. But I was actually commissioned to make a Naruto themed game. That one was actually one of my favorites. And I knew nothing about it. So I read the whole series in order to prepare myself to understand the characters, the world, the powers, everything. And so sometimes I do research, and you should too. Are you going to do a Batman game? Know the history of Batman. Know the characters. Know the history, know the lore, know the lingo, so that your game is legitimate as possible. Create a folder and start collecting your assets. So think about, what is your color scheme going to be? What images are you going to have? What icons? What are your buttons going to look like? Do you have special fonts? Do you have special sounds? Do you have special backgrounds? Just collect, just put it, Pinterest it, make a Pinterest board if you're a Pinterester, or just make a regular folder on your desktop. Think about your question selection. How do you want your questions to look? Play with that, explore that design, Google image search. You can always tweak it later. And lastly, what is your question slide going to look like? What kind of questions are you going to build? I just do the simple generic A, B, C, D, and then I can play around with it later depending on what content I'm creating. But this is a really fun one to do. So these are the things that I think about before I even build the beast. Those are the questions that I have to ask myself. And then lastly, I like to think about my bonuses. What kind of bonuses are you going to put if you're going to put bonuses? You can have, many bonuses, or you can have one bonus. You can have sporadic bonuses. It's up to you to design and decide how, and many things are going to go into your. And then finally, once you build your game, ask for input. And remember that good games are going to appeal to different people differently. So reach out to different minds and ask for feedback on different types of gamers, different types of players. You do want to test play the game yourself from beginning to end to check everything. You want to ask for feedback. You want to be open to sharing. You want to ask ideas. Don't know why that went opposite. There we go. Edit. You want to fine tune those ideas before you kind of play it in real life environments. And the last one for your demo is play. Your very first time that you play it live in front of a student or an audience, that is your final test. Reflect, watch how they react to certain things, and take mental notes of how to do things a little bit better. And then, of course, you can always revamp ideas that you really liked and do something else with them. I recycle ideas all the time. So that is a couple of things that I think are really, really important for thinking about creating games. And I'd like to use the next 20 minutes or so to show you how I make them. And I'm going to do something very crude. I like to, let's see where it is. I call this a crude game. And I kind of just started a little piece for you here. And once again, I made something very, very simple. Nothing too crazy, no images on here. But I am kind of starting to play around with a new idea. So I get to kind of talk about my ideas with you today, which is really exciting. The first slide is always going to be your title. And I'll usually just kind of, if I have a name for a game, great, I put it in. But if I don't, I'll just, say title. And then I leave it alone. And then my second slide is usually the rules. I always create a rule slide, even if my students are familiar with my games, because sometimes the rules are different, but then I'm always designing my games for educators and users that may have never used this before. So I always have a rule section for any newbies. After my rule slide, then I go into my question selection screen. And right now, again, super crude, but I have created 6 questions. And I kind of wanted to play around today with the idea that what if my questions were color coded? And students could see visually that if they chose a purple question, it would be easy, which means less points. If they chose a blue question, that's medium and a little bit more points, and then green would be a challenging question, but the reward would be high. And so I've just kind of started with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For the moment, I am actually going to delete these and I'm going to put them back, I promise. Because what I find is when people are making the question selection screen is they'll do this and then they'll copy it and then they'll paste, you know, and they'll do that like 30 times if they have the 30 questions. But there's an easier way to do that because we actually need to program our animations. In order to get to the question selection slide, and I'll call this question 1 so that it's actually easier for us to navigate. Question 2, question 3. I'm right-clicking on my question and I can actually duplicate the slide. That way you're not designing everything over and over and over and over again. And I'm going to put it in order here. Question 4. And I'll do one more, question 5. And you can move the order of your slides as much as you want. And my little arrow is going to represent the, you know, going to the bonus slide. So I actually will create bonus. And I haven't decided what my bonus is yet, so I'm just going to leave that blank. But I am going to use this arrow as an icon to link to my bonus slide. So I want, when I click on this arrow, to jump to my bonus. And I'll call this bonus for question 1, just for continuity so that people can follow me. I wouldn't call it bonus for question 1, but it's nice so that we can see it. To program this, you're going to right click and there's something called link. And then you're going to choose your slide. PowerPoint will usually start with either the existing file or place in this slide. You can actually link to an entirely new file. You can jump from PowerPoint to PowerPoint. You can go from a PowerPoint to a Word doc if you wanted to. You could open up another program. But I want to just link to another slide, and I want us to jump to slide 5. So I am going to go to slide 5, and it's going to always be titled whatever is the first text in your slide. So it's nice when they are labeled because then it's easier to find. But you'll notice that some of my slides will just be slides 3, slide 4, slide 5. So I wanted to jump to slide 5 for the bonus. I press OK. And then when I preview this in full screen mode, and I click on that arrow, ta-da, it jumps to my bonus for question 1. The problem is now I can't go back. How do I go back to the question selection screen, right? I'm kind of stuck in limbo here, in game limbo. So as a designer, you need to make sure that everything is properly linked together. So in all of my bonuses, I would probably have another icon. I'll just do a triangle. Usually I like to pick like a fun icon of some sort. So I would have like my image assets already ready to go. Make it a different fun color. And this would be like return, oh, you know, I'll do the sticky note to connect to my question selection. There we go. And once you can create your own shapes in PowerPoint, or you're more than welcome to use things from the internet, download assets, image files, PNGs, as much as whatever it is that you want. I'm just using basic shapes today, especially for anybody not really familiar with PowerPoint. I feel like that's a level 2. So Jeanette, if you want me to do a level 2, let me know later. And I'm going to link this to slide 3 because slide 3 is my question selection. And anytime that icon is picked, it will jump back. So let me check my hyperlink here. So I want 1 to jump to question 1. And then when I go into my little question selection screen, if I click on the one, it jumps to question 1 slide. And I press my arrow, it goes to my bonus, and then I click on my home button, boom. And we've just done a full loop, full circle. How do I get that one to disappear? You might have remembered that in my games, all of the questions that are selected will disappear once you return to the question selection slide. That is called a trigger animation. And I had to learn this when I lived in Korea on a Korean PC in Korean. And if I could figure this out in Korean, you can figure this out, hopefully, in English. So firstly, we want to trigger, or we want to program the animation that we want. So when we click on the one, it's going to jump us to the question, but then when we return, it disappears. So we want our object to disappear. And you can decide which exit animation. So entrance will make it pop into it. I never use emphasis. It's very rare that I use emphasis, but you could have an answer like glow or spin or change color, or you can have something disappear. I'm just going to have it fly out. Boom, it's going to drop. So now it's going to drop. But what we need it to do is drop when we click it. And if you open up your animation pane, which is up here at the top, let's just take a look at what it says. My mouse cursor right now, it says that this is going to disappear when I click on it, but I'll show you what happens. Let's see if it actually works. It doesn't disappear. Because what's happening is when I click on it and we jump to our question slide and then we go to our bonus and we go home, when you go back to an original slide, the animation is going to reset. What we need to do is we need to program it to stay disappeared. We need to trigger the animation to disappear permanently. And so this is where people get really confused. So what we actually need to do is we needed to choose our animation, which we have. The second step is to actually go to the trigger. And I'm making sure that I'm on my object. I'm going to trigger the disappear when I click on the object. And this is where we get confused. On your slide, the two here represent the objects on our slide 3. The first one is rectangle folded corner 3, which is the purple one. The second is content placer holder 2, which would be this thing right here. If I were to copy this object, slide, and label it number 2, go into my trigger, now I have 2 rectangle folder corners, and they have different numbers. So it's always best to make sure that you know which rectangle object that you are using. And when I create my question selection slide, I actually just do one and then I just copy paste. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on the click of rectangle folder corner 3. It should disappear or exit. And you know that you've done this right if you have a little lightning bolt that's in the top left-hand corner here. And the trigger in my version of PowerPoint on the PC is just underneath the animation pane. And hopefully it just says it's checked. And I'm actually gonna just close this for a moment, see if I've done this right. I'm going to full screen it. We're gonna click on the one. We've gone to our question slide. We've gone to our bonus slide. We go home, boom, and it disappears. So that trigger programming is super important. That step is really important to do. You can then, once it works, honestly, go copy paste. Because the trigger is already programmed. Once you copy and paste it, there it is right there. You can see it. And then that way you don't have to like select, trigger, select, trigger, select, trigger. It's just nice. It's nice to just copy paste everything so that you don't have to do the work 30 times. You only have to, you know, Control V or Command V or right click paste only a couple times here. You just have to make sure that you change the number as well. You need to make sure that you change the blue here. And then the green was the harder question. There we go. So you change the number because this would be question 1, question 2, question 3. And then you also need to make sure that you edit the link because we've copied this object, but everything is going to be exactly as the same as object 1. Our second question needs to be linked question 2. So you would just manually go in there, press OK. And then the same thing can be said for question 3. You would just go down and do question 3, press OK. And then now all of these will jump to their respective questions. The same thing can be said for the bonuses. If I was just going to do a very simple bomb game formula, you go to a question, then you have points, or you go a question, and then you have a bonus, and then you return home, then I would design this bonus. And I would make it as pretty or as crazy as I wanted. And then I would actually just duplicate it and put it underneath each of my questions. So that I don't actually have to redesign everything 30 times if I was going to do 30 bonuses. I would also have to make sure that my hyperlinks are proper. So question 6, or sorry, yeah, slide 6, question 6, I wanted to link to slide 7. So I just want to make sure that that arrow links properly to slide 7. Oh, I just pressed cancel. Whoops. And on question 3, I want to make sure that it links to slide 9, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to relink this because in the duplication, it's already linked to slide 3, but you can always check to make sure that the home button going back to that question is there. I also want to make sure that my answer pops up. So you can do 2 ways to make your answer appear. First one, which is the easier one, just have it fly in. And when you play this, it's not going to show until you click. I've clicked, or you can actually just press the arrow key to make it appear. I'll show you another one, which is actually really fun. We're going to use the idea of a trigger animation. I'm going to create a circle. And I'll just say, reveal answer. This is also how I make bonuses appear, or like extra objects appear, or whatever. So my goal is that when you click on the reveal answer circle, this will pop up. In order to do that, we first need to program this. We want it to appear. So I've had it fly in. Now we need to trigger it. So when we click on the circle, answer appear here. So I'm going to go down. Here's my animation. I'm going to go to my trigger. So when I click on oval 6, and I know it's oval 6 because this is an oval shape. When I click on oval 6, answer here will fly in. Let's see if I did that right. It's been a while since I've done this. All right, reveal answer, click, boom. And so that is how you can get things to appear onto your slide. You could even do something like you know. Candy for all. But you can get creative, more creative than me with your questions. So what's the prize? You click on it, candy for all. And then you can click your arrow. You might have a bonus or something else. And then so that's kind of in a very crude, in a very easy way, hopefully that you can kind of get some of the basics down of how I do things and when and why I do them. In terms of design philosophy and features, this is just all shapes. And I kind of just create my own worlds using backgrounds and shapes. So if I wanted to say something like a dual color, it's basically just 2D art layered on top of each other. You can also send things to the back, not link them, send them to the back. If you click on a text box, not on the inside so that you get the flashing cursor, but if you actually click on it so that it's highlighted and go to your home tab, you can choose the upper A or the lower A to instantly and very quickly make things bigger or smaller. That will save you quite a bit of time. And you can even play with your font style. In the last 2 minutes, I'd like to share with you 2 sources that I like to use for obtaining images and obtaining sound. So the first one that is a really interesting one is called Freesound. I'm hoping that many people know of this website. So my internet is a little weak hosting this. So if it doesn't work, freesound.org is basically royalty-free sound clips that people record and then upload for people to use. It's free to sign up. This is not a sponsored content, but it is free to sign up and be able to download sound clips, and they are completely royalty free. So if you did want to put in any sort of sound effect in your game, you can even trigger animation sounds to play when you click on things or when something pops up, or when you change from slide to slide or transition from slide to slide. Hashtag not sponsored, absolutely. I found this when I was in Korea because I think I needed something like nails on a chalkboard, and I wanted something like really creepy. And I found lots of nails on a chalkboard on this site. So this is a great site if you wanted to use music, sound effects, anything like that. Unfortunately, I don't have time to get in there. Thank you to those who are also sharing links to other things, other royalty-free assets. I'll definitely check out any of them that are in there. Freesound is also really, really good for video, video gaming design and video and multimedia sound performance. It's a great website to use. The other one, again, hashtag not sponsored, is I like to use pexels.com for royalty-free photography sites. There's quite a few out there that you can use, but if there is something in here, it's not as cartoony, right? That you might be able to pick from for your game, then this is a great site to use for backgrounds and images and building up your designs, and even taking like little parts of your image and doing other really fun things with it. And then lastly, what I'd like to share with you, some of you might already know this, some of you might not, is the magic of PNGs. So just going with my Dragon Quest line here, because he's my bae. PNGs basically are images with no background, and you can use them in your work, into your PowerPoints, into your designs, where the background will be completely transparent, see through, and it actually makes your PowerPoint a little bit more interesting. Yes, I'm using copyright images at the moment, but you can create your own PNGs or get other PNGs that are safer. But I'm just going to put them in here. Let's see if we can get him in here. I'm just going to copy him. There he is. He's so cute. So you can put him anywhere, and it just looks so much nicer. Like, can I rant? I need to rant about my staff PowerPoints, and during staff meetings, they're the ugliest things because they use Comic Sans and like bright lime green font colors, and then all of these like random pictures that just have these terrible backgrounds. Stop doing it. Don't use Comic Sans. Don't use colors that I can't read, especially red. Like, let's just take a look at this for a moment. If we, like, this could be like a whole other topic. It's just, bleh. It's horrible. I'm going to even put this on the very front here. Ugh. Terrible photo or terrible color combination. But what I'm trying to get at here is the PNGs. You can like move them around, and you could just like even create like a bunch of them. And you can create your own little background dioramas. You can get really creative with it. And then say you really like that. Say you really like that as a background. You can actually print screen that. This is what I did back in the day before I had Photoshop. If you print screen your background, because say you have like 16,000 different layers on here. See if that worked again. Let's try that again. There we go. Because if you've got 16,000 different things in your background, every time you touch an object, it's going to like move around. You can lock it into place, but let's just make it a little bit more easier. Just paste that in there, send that to back, and boom, you have like an entire background that is totally flat. The other thing that you can do is, because it's in my clipboard, you can format your background, picture, texture, fill, clipboard if it's copied, and then it doesn't move. So that's also another way to continue to build your interesting worlds and backgrounds and little, the little pieces there. So that's an hour and a half. And I've got 44 seconds left. So if there is any other pressing questions that anybody has for me, please feel free to put it in the chat. Unmute yourself if you have any questions. I don't know if this is running past, but I'll stick around for anybody that wants to stick around if I'm allowed to. But yeah, that's basically a very short and condensed and a lot to take in on my favorite program in the universe, Microsoft PowerPoint.
And we do have some time, so if you do want to unmute yourself, you can to ask a question. That was my phone telling me that we had out of time. Okay. So it looks like she froze. So you can wait a minute. So I did put in the chat, there is a link to evaluate this session. So please complete that, especially if you're a student who has attended this for extra credit. That is the information we're going to be sending to your instructor. I also posted the link for Dr. Andrews' talk after lunch at 1 p.m., which is Blind Runs, Exploring Ludo Harmony and Dissonance in the Audiovisual Rhetoric of The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. So thank you all for being here, and I will see you all at 1.
right, and that has been Steph with her discussion on creative gaming and education. After lunch, we will resume our conference with Dr. Andrew Latham, who will be talking about speedrunning and The Legend of Zelda.